Yeah, there seems to be very little regard for civilian casualties, and like doing the Superman thing of like saving the squirrel and whatnot. That's part of why plenty of people actually reacted very positively to that in the superhero Superman movie, and also why like the Thunderbolts was the way it was, where it's like that's why that felt like a change of pace. Like they're aware of it to a certain extent. Okay, I gotta use this here. Very nice. That's why I think in Invincible, it's really important to see parts of the show where like a lot of the heroes, including Invincible, like Mark Grayson, are saving civilians and show great concern for the well-being of civilians and fundamentally want to help help out with things even when there's not like a giant villain to fight, you know? But you know, Mark is young and dumb and makes a lot of mistakes and so forth. You know, you've heard it all before. DS Rainbow Road. New season of Invincible's coming up. Yeah, I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. Hopefully they don't. I'm hoping they don't homogenize, is what I'm saying. You know, into just another superhero show. Like, I do kind of like that the show is about Invincible absolutely going through it all the time. Like, he's just getting the crap beaten out of him. And it's not like, I don't want them to, like, Batman-ify Invincible, right? Where he's just about beating up the bad guy or something like that. Outlined? Almost. Ooh, what a target shock! Oh. Whoa, okay, okay. Didn't realize he had a green shell. I didn't mean to trick there, so I take the slow route a little bit. All the changes for like the past 3 seasons humanize the world better than the comics, and I hope they continue that. I hope it's still like a very humanistic superhero media. I would really like that. Oh, oops. Ow. And I think I'm just gonna get, yep. Unfortunate. Drinking Girl was originally supposed to die. I could have figured. Like, that seems like a part of the story where you just fucking die. You know? It doesn't seem like, you know, there's some superhero media that will actually comment on the nature of fascism and like capital even. I think, okay, Invincible seems like, what, insofar as it deals with the Viltrum Empire, is commenting on fascism in a more internationalist sort of context. And I think that's one of the show's strong suits, where what makes it really a good show rather than just like the new superhero show. Mark Grayson is incredible as a character, but then I think the Viltrumites, as a presence, as a political concept, are kind of the star of the show. Them and the Coalition, where the Coalition kind of represents an idealized interstellar, liberal humanist, you know, group. And then the Viltrumites represent a fascist empire that's driven by insecurity, narratives of superiority, but then fundamentally engages in extremely irrational, self-destructive behavior and is thus lashing out at the point that Mark hears about it. Like, Invincible seasons 2 and 3 don't happen that long after season 1. So for the whole time that the Invincible show is happening, the Viltrum Empire is on the brink of collapse because of the way that it's been conducting its imperialism. That is to say, focusing so heavily on genetic and physical superiority that it actually just kills and culls anybody that it views as lesser. That's not a sustainable model of empire, but it is ideologically motivated, and they're having to reckon with that. And rather than actually reckoning with it and, you know, grow and change as a person, you know, low tier god type shit, they are simply trying to find a different way of reifying that narrative that prolongs the life of their empire a little bit longer. You know, it's very reminiscent actually of other empires throughout history. You can take a look at any empire that has controlled an expansive territory, and the moment, like, you can tell when they're in decline because they will, like, their mode of empire will stop working. What I mean by that is, like, it's not like, oh, when they stop being able to conquer, how do I put this? There's not so straightforward a relationship. It's not so one-sided between imperial decline and not being able to conquer territory. Oftentimes, the empire is currently, like, an empire will be undergoing decline at the point that it reaches the height of its territorial control and geopolitical influence, because the internal contradictions are festering. And Viltrum seems to be in that sort of spot where they are still trying to expand, but for the first time they're having trouble. They've reached their apex, and that is part of the decline. Kind of like how Rome, you could argue that in a lot of ways, the Roman Empire was completely defined by decay that was left over from the era of the Republic, you know? And like with the Incas, how a lot of their decline was defined by their inability to keep expanding empire, or rather was reflected in that, you know? I'm kind of yapping. Hopefully people can see the angle I'm taking here. I hope they touch on that a little bit more, how the Viltrum Empire is a fundamentally unstable entity, and empire as a concept is just completely untenable, especially when it involves such a direct and like amplified version of what countries on Earth have been doing for a long time. And I know this is like lefty meme bias talking, but I would actually love to see a part of the show like where Viltrumites who are loyal to the Empire are sort of forced to confront these ideological and intellectual contradictions, and to sort of put on display and make them realize their weakness in a way that isn't just how hard you can punch something. It feels like it's so perfectly set up for somebody on Earth to like know all of this, to have seen it happen a million times before through their studies, and just be like, dog, you're weak as shit. You know, you could punch me in half, but your society is doomed. You know? Yeah, like a day in the life kind of thing. Like, I know they get to some sort of point like this in the comics because of like how the relationship with the Viltrumites and Earth changes over time, but like legitimately, I do really want to see that sort of ideological conflict make Viltrumites realize, oh, maybe we're not strong because being able to fucking pick up a giant cruise ship and slam it into the side of the mountain with like one pinky finger isn't necessarily what strength entails, or something like that, you know? Like, oh, for all your ability to just kill anybody you want, you're actually really, really weak and stupid. You've let your brain atrophy, right? I would like that. I would really like that. But I recognize on many levels that I am just sort of like wish casting. Sorry, Andy. Had to get rid of that red shell. One mushroom. Oh, well. I maybe deserve that. This version of Cheap Cheap Beach is a little bit unfamiliar to me. I think I don't take that ramp route, like big flip trick route, next lap. Unless I have a mushroom. Okay. I'm just gonna use this. Give me that. Thank you. Okay, now I'll use this here. Like so. Whoa, okay, that was very goofy. Turbulent ending here. Okay, well, I'll just... 6th place. I trust this show. It had storylines with Omni-Man. Has to deal with problems he can't punch. Yeah, I think I need more of that. I need the Viltrumites to... And it seems like the show is going to go in this direction in some respect, because it is demonstrating, in fact, at the end of Season 3, spoilers, Omni-Man straight up lays out the nature of the decline of the Viltrum Empire. There's so few Viltrumites because they spent so much time killing each other and killing everybody they subjugated that they had to find a better way to do things. I do really want to see the Viltrumites have to deal with problems that they can't punch. And I kind of want to see somebody who's used to dealing with problems like that have to explain to this supposedly superior being, okay, this is a problem you can't punch. You know, and them have to like make that realization in real time. I feel like there's enormous potential for great storytelling there. Fuck you, random solicitation bot. Like, in a way, I think Conquest is a great example of all of the contradictions of the Viltrum Empire. He is, like, his entire identity, his entire life has been about just punching something as hard as he can, to such an extent that he's actually extremely sad, you know? And it is a contradiction that compounds upon itself, right? He outlines that everybody's really afraid of me because of how strong I am and how willing I am to just kill everybody. And they keep sending me on missions where that's what I'm supposed to do. And then when I'm, you know, get better at that and I succeed, they become more afraid of me. It's a vicious cycle. Did they fall off? No, they're still up there. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. Turn to Crash Bandicoot for a little bit. Yeah, like, him saying he's a victim of his own success, he's not wrong. You know, he's evil. He is possibly the worst, like, morally, he might be the worst being to have ever existed in the galaxy, or in the universe, right? Forgot about the woe meme. I never forget about the woe meme. But at the same time, he is alienated from his own sense of self and his own humanity, even though he's not, you know, he's not human, he's a Viltrumite, but, like, you know what I mean. He's alienated from any chance of emotional well-being at really no fault of his own. He is just strong, and his strength has been exploited for the purpose of statecraft and empire building, and as a result, it makes his life worse. You know, that's not to say he doesn't have agency. That's part of what makes him also evil, is that he does have the agency, like, to just say, fuck you, I'm not doing this anymore. What if I want to just go have a friend or something? What if I want to tell somebody about all this? Right? You know, like, given how afraid the Viltrumites are of him, he could just do that. Feels like the story is making Mark get radicalized. I hope that that's kind of the direction that the story takes, that sort of radicalizes Mark in a pro-social direction, like almost against the GDA and the Viltrum Empire at the same time, because he views them both as like tools of the state and whatever. Like, he's not, as much as Cecil's motives obviously are understandable and rational in wanting to have countermeasures to somebody like Mark, a being that's fundamentally undefeatable. It's not for the purpose of like keeping him in check. Rather, it's for the purpose of consolidating power within the state. We see this when he starts making Reanimen out of the dead invincible variants, right? And of course, that's not to say Cecil is inhuman, but I think if you want to make the story absolute peak, more than it already is, which is, it is already peak, by the way, you would write, you would have this ideological realization eventually start to take form, where Mark says, like, you know, the GDA and the Viltrum Empire aren't that different of entities, right? Like, maybe if, as he learns more about the contradictions on Earth, he's like, you're defending a flawed system here. They're trying to defend a flawed system there. Theirs is worse, but you're engaging in some of the same things, where you fundamentally you want to have control over me in a way that deprives me of agency and personhood. And to a certain extent, that's what you want to do to other people as well. You know? But again, it's like 3 orders of magnitude less bad than whatever the fuck Viltrum gets up to on the daily, right? He also asked, yeah, that's actually true. The conversation that Mark has with Anissa, I think, is really important, where he asks, like, you know, why should we become part of the Viltrum Empire? Like, we don't want to. Let us make our own decisions. We're going to make mistakes, you know? Like, a comfortable state of subjugation and subservience is still subjugation and subservience. You're not free to live how you will. And that's like the fundamental purpose of the project of society, is to enable that with a large group of people and structures that can, you know, overcome a lot of natural barriers that would otherwise, you know, weigh down on us in like a, you know, I don't know, primitive state of being and so forth. You know, it's good stuff. It's good, and it has potential, I should say. And I hope that they act on that. Their episodes that deal with mental health are also just like really good. I think that's like a specialty of theirs. It's almost like a different kind of liberalism, you know? Sure. Oh, that got him in the air? I didn't even do that on purpose. That's a really, really brutal blue shell. Devastating effect. You can go in front of me? Yeah, go ahead. Because he might have a red shell or something. Or he just has a fake item box and he does that to me. Okay. Wow, whoa! What the... What was that about? Alright, I need an item. I really need this next item, otherwise I don't think there's much of a chance for me. Where is the next... Oh, it's around this turn. Okay. What? Memer? TKS Memer? That's crazy. Give me that shit. The stupidest race of all time. It'd be depressing if the story ends by Mark turning into a liberal. I would be okay with him turning into a social democratic liberal who just, like, hasn't read Marx, but ultimately takes issue with a lot of the same things that socialists would take issue with. I think it would actually be a massive flaw in the writing of the show if they just have Mark turn into a boilerplate neoliberal, you know? Like, I really don't want to see that. Like, I think what I want to see is a lot of the ways that Invincible sort of finds himself in the neoliberal machinery. I want more of that to be characterized as mistakes that he makes, things that he views as, yeah, sure, that could be important to my development and growth as a person, but that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. And if I were to be in that situation again, I wouldn't make that same choice. Like with him being a prison guard, superpowered prison guard, you know, or even working for Cecil rather than working with Cecil. Like, I think that's something that he'd be smart to work with Cecil. But I don't think that, I think that it was the correct decision. However irrationally both, however irrational and like really heated Mark got, I think ultimately it was the correct decision to be like, well, I don't want to work for you anymore, you know? Okay, they got the mega. It's 150, right? Oh yeah, wait, no. I'm CGGP brain still, even a couple years later. I'm thinking about like the odds of it being 100 or 150 or mirror when I realize I think Retro Rewind is hard coded to be 150 all the time. Which is cool, I think. It's like standardization. Nice. What was wrong with you, 45? What's your opinion on Powerplex? I think they handled him correctly. That he's like insane, and ultimately that he's a very malignant personality. He's very narcissistic. That's what I meant when I said that, like, when they deal with sort of interpersonal issues of mental health and struggle and that sort of thing, I think the show is like in its element there. I think his character is written really well, and I fucking hate him because that's like they wrote him that way, and he's insane and not a good person. It was nice though to see that he is authentic in a lot of his beliefs that, like, oh, Invincible is evil. As much as it is projection, he does genuinely believe that. Like with Angstrom Levy, you see him like actually he just can't handle the fact that there's one good variant of Invincible, so he hires all the evil ones to like kill him. Powerplex actually just hates Invincible as like a concept. Which, you know, and the consistency in that is that, like, you see Powerplex being like happy as hell when he killed one of the evil Invincible variants. So I was like, oh, that's a cool detail. There's a lot of superpowered mentally damaged people. It's one of those things where I think power like that actually does just sort of mentally damage you. It takes a toll. You know, because it's still just power, right? It's for the same reason that being a billionaire really isolates you and drives you insane, makes you stupid, because it's a form of power consolidation. It isolates you from the rest of the world. Superpowers can have a similar effect. Now, of course, with the way that superpowers are depicted in superhero media like Invincible, frequently it doesn't have to pan out that way. And a lot of times it doesn't, because having superpowers doesn't necessarily preclude you from having a normal life. You know? So there's still a possibility for you to be integrated in society rather than you purely existing over and above it. You know? But again, still like superpowers, still metahumans, and like ultimately the effort on the part of governments to develop countermeasures is understandable and warranted to a certain degree. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, even donate to support the channel. It would really mean a lot to me.